Step into the world of success with your brand amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. I knew when I saw the name of her business that I had to talk to her. Ashley Graham is the founder of the Conscious Publicist, and that is something we need more of in the world. And I'm really excited to unpack your journey and the work that you do to make impact. So Ashley, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an opportunity that I've been so excited for since we first got connected. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So let's talk before we get into Conscious Publicist, right? How did that manifest? Like, how did you decide you were going to be a publicist, much less start your own agency, much less be the conscious publicist?
I will try to keep my response to that kind of condensed because, just with anybody who is starting a business, there's natural pivots and evolutions and transformations that come. And the Conscious Publicist is more so my second business. And that entity and that brand just really took mold from years of experience in my previous business. Now, even in my previous business, I had initially started off in marketing and branding just because those were the things that really lit me up. So I like to say that I did not seek out becoming a publicist. Becoming a publicist sought me out. But when you look at the threads of a publicist and the industry and who they are as a person, I get lit up by hearing other people's stories. I really get connected to the heart behind why people do what they do and why they serve other people through their businesses. So it was inevitable that I was going to be at the intersection that I'm in today.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that journey. Did you go to school for marketing and branding? Because I started out with experiential marketing, moved into launch marketing, and then eventually found my way to being a publicist as well.
Love the alignments there. I was introduced to marketing as a senior in high school, and there was just something, whether it was the wisdom and the guidance that I got from my teacher at that time, or just, again, this inevitability that I was going to find my passion in marketing. I was very lucky enough to find it early on. Took my marketing class in high school, really found that was my path forward in my career. Ended up leaving my hometown in Missouri to pursue my bachelor's in marketing and management out here in Southern California, and just continued to evolve and adapt in the industry, really from there.
Yeah. And were you in-house or working at an agency before you decided to take the leap to your own?
It's interesting. I worked more so in in-house positions. And what's the best way to say this? Is kind of like a starving recent college grad. I found myself more in kind of non-traditional marketing roles. Mm-hmm. So kind of went into office management, more administrative customer support, but it was in startup environments where there was opportunity to explore taking on marketing, taking on branding, and everything else that kind of lived within those roles. And then from there, it was just taking more leaps to further build my resume and expand in that way as a professional. And it wasn't until I took the leap to start my own business that I ended up getting an agency role, really understood kind of the inner workings of PR from an agency perspective. And that really was kind of the catalyst to button up my resume, or at least what I felt that I needed at that time to start my business. And it just has really taken off from there.
Okay, I have to ask, where in Missouri are you from?
I'm from a town called St. Charles, Missouri. It's just right outside St. Louis County.
Okay. I'm from Lawrence, Kansas. So I used to go to St. Louis to go to clubs and stuff sometimes when I was younger.
Love it.
I love that we both found our way out to Southern California. And also, like you, I did a lot of different jobs, kind of learned admin, did accounting, whatever needed to be done to move into that marketing sector in companies and then move into these other roles. So it's so funny because I just felt like I knew you, we had a connection, but now I'm like, wow, there's so many things So many through lines. And well, what was your business before the Conscious Publicist? And I know it's not only an agency, but it's also a podcast. So we'll unpack that a little bit later.
Yeah. So I'll just more so talk about kind of what the ideation of my previous business was from the very early stages and kind of how that led into the Conscious Publicist. So given just how passionate I was about branding, I really wanted to kind of put my branding hat on to brand this business that didn't exist into where I saw it transforming. So it was a completely new, unique identity. And as any entrepreneur, you learn lessons and failures and all the other things that really make you grow as an entrepreneur. And when I had initially started out with that business, I wanted to offer anything and everything I could to my clients just because I was wanting to really serve. Through just different pivots in that business, what I realized was, one, there's a lot of power and impact that comes from getting crystal clear on how you show up in your brilliance and how you lead other people through that. But then there also was this perspective of bringing my own identity to the business, which was not something that I did beforehand. I built a whole entity of a business that was almost kind of separate from me in a way, but with my influence. But I wanted a business to represent who I am as a person, who I am as a leader, and how I really build connections with my clients, audience, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So let's unpack that. What does it mean to you to be a conscious publicist? How did you choose the name? And then, how did you find your position in the marketplace?
So the Conscious Publicist was almost an identifier that I gave myself. Mm-hmm. I was X and X of some business, my previous business, but I always identified myself as a person as the conscious publicist that supported that business. And then it was almost as if a light bulb went off one day. I had an epiphany that I'm like, why wouldn't I just go ahead and brand a whole business underneath that identity? Because it, one, encapsulates who I am as a person, but more so, it highlights the type of work that I'm so connected to. And conscious can be interpreted in a number of different ways. I'm also a very spiritual person. I have a lot of mindfulness practices that I do, in my personal life that really activate me as a person. But it's through those practices that I'm able to bring a level of intentionality and mindfulness to the work that I do as well. So it all ends up connecting. And there's so many other little notes and nuggets that I could always highlight there, but bit at that.
No, please share. I love it when we can really unpack our journeys and live in our authenticity, which is what it sounds like you were able to find your pathway towards.
One of the things that comes to mind is I learned so much about myself when I went out and started a business. And I had developed so many other strengths that I do not think I had before. Or maybe they were just dormant and needed the right environment to bring them to the surface. And it really molded me into the person that I am today through the lessons, the failures, the reminders, the pivots, all the things that came through this spiritual journey of business. Sure. But with all that said, how I've changed and adapted as a person has made me an incredible leader for my clients. It's made me the perfect catalyst to bring other people's story and their narrative to the forefront. And it's something that I find so much joy and fulfillment from, is because I believe that there's so much power in storytelling, and there's so much influence and change that can come from highlighting people's stories and their own journeys, which makes me perfect for being in the thought leadership space, because that's what it is.
Yeah. And you call yourself, you're doing the work of people relations, not public relations, which is amazing and such a vital construct, because it really is about the relationship that you form when you hear a thought leader, how you connect to their story, how you connect to the changes they can make in your life, perhaps.
Absolutely. I love how you highlighted the people relationship.
I think that's really important, because really you're guiding people almost as I think on your website it does say concierge.
Yes. Cool. And now it's really interesting. Messaging is one of the things that I think always evolves and adapts, whether it's a coach, an author, a business, a brand. The messaging is always evolving and adapting. And for me, when I thought about the identifier of concierge, is it more so just brings this energy that it's not a one size fits all environment that we create with the conscious publicist and the relationships that we have in partnerships. It's really much adapted to the uniqueness of our clients, the uniqueness of their story, and more so how we're able to find the right opportunities that are in direct alignment with who they are as a person, what their business represents, but more so the story and the narrative that they're looking to tell.
Mm-hmm. So who is your ideal client? Is it somebody who is working in a B corporation or nonprofit or doing something that's putting positive energy out into the world? Or is it, does it run the gamut?
It kind of runs the gamut. There are different offers in our offer suite that are tailored to different types of client avatars. And it really just comes down to the need and necessity of the client and where they're at in their stage. Mm-hmm. Now, our experiences are more so in, unique strategic consulting and advisory, where it really just depends on what they're needing. So our VIP experiences are tailored directly to where they're at on the thought leadership journey, whether it's Tier 1, they're needing to understand what their thought leadership message and positioning. But if there's a client, whether a coach, author, executive, even a business, if they're wanting to more so get a strategy, a high tier strategy built for them as it pertains to PR and media, then we also do have Tier 2 and Tier 3 in our VIP experiences that support that. Whereas our PR expansion program is more so in the traditional PR model sense, where it's retained for 6 months and not longer if they choose to expand into a longer campaign. But it's for the businesses or the executive or high growth thought leader is what I've been able to kind of target it as, is where they already have their infrastructure of their business really set in place. They're maxed in their time to where they cannot have a DIY approach to their PR. That's where they would retain the conscious publicist to really act as their all-in representation for all of their PR influence and authority.
And how did you find your first client when you made this shift?
First client with the conscious publicist, or just taking it?
The conscious publicist.
Yeah, well, my clients, and I just owe this to networking and being such a people person. Most of my business from the early days up until now has been through relationships and through referrals. So our first client for the Conscious Publicist was just through being an incredible referral partner for other publicists who maybe didn't really have the bandwidth to take on the client, or it wasn't directly in alignment with like their niche. Most of my business still to this day has been referrals, and I owe a lot to just being a relationship person through that.
I really do feel that that's how most business gets done. We can talk about doing ads, building up our own thought leadership, of course, is important. But really, it comes down to that personal connection. Somebody knows that you should be connected to this person and work with them. And I love the beauty of that synergy. And I think that's why it's really important for people to think about their network, to think about connecting, to reach out to the person that you might be scared to reach out to. Because people are, I think, pretty nice most of the time. They would love to give you advice. They might not have a place for you right now if you're a job seeker, but they may be able to offer you some great advice and great tools and resources to use.
Absolutely. It's actually beautiful that you said that, because I feel that that is really why thought leaders are so driven to do the work, is because they're all about mentorship. They're all about guiding and sharing the wealth of knowledge that they've accumulated over their life or their career. And I always say this in more mentorship capacity, that, if there's somebody that you idolize or that you respect, just given work that they do, thought leaders are all about connecting, whether it's through one-on-one to offer some type of nugget of wisdom that they can take with them, or there's always open invitations to learn through the content that they're creating as well.
100%. So at what point did you decide to expand to a podcast? And what has that done for you and for your business, perhaps?
It's questioning so much. The journey into starting the podcast was kind of a delayed one. I the ideation and the thought to start a podcast years ago, but one of the pieces that I felt I was missing as my own voice behind a platform like that is I didn't feel that there was my own unique angle to bring to the table. And I'm an innovator by default. And so I'm always trying to think about uniqueness and how I can follow traditional ways of creation, but finding my own spin on it. And it took years of my career and just human experience to really find my positioning. And when I finally had the courage to go out and start the Conscious Publicist podcast in March of 2023, that's a year, I was like really just passionate about not having attachment to how the platform was going to transform and evolve. During the ideation process of it, it was a principle during the launch of it, and it still is very much a principle to this day. And the reason why it is such a principle in just how I nurture the platform is that thought leadership, again, always trying to find the connection to the business. I'm always trying to find connections, regardless of if I kind of go a little too innovative sometimes, is that thought leadership is not linear. And it does not follow particular steps. There's trailblazing for a reason, and thought leaders are known for trailblazing because they try to find their own unique spin, and that's what makes them notable and recognizable. And so when it comes to the podcast, I just really feel into what I feel is meant to share in those moments.
So is it a solo podcast? Do you bring guests on? Is it a mix of the two?
It's a little bit of a mix of the two. It's more so solo, but what I've actually been playing around with recently is taking more of an audio journalistic role to highlighting guests, whereas it's not tandem one-on-one conversations like this, but it's really doing audio submission call-outs to leaders who want a dedicated 15 to 20 plus minutes of them sharing a story and really going through the storytelling process, integrating that into an episode and doing an intro and an outro, and just really allowing that leader to shine in the story that they're meant to tell in that moment. We are currently in a grief series because grief has very much been a part of my experience this year. And being able to host, again, just a different narrative that you wouldn't necessarily see on a PR podcast or a thought leadership process. It's not a very known or recognizable topic to hear about, but again, it's very much a part of the human experience. And what some of the leaders that I've highlighted in this context has been able to showcase is just how much that they have taken their own experiences of grief, how it's impacted their business, but then also just how they've leaned into grief as their guide and their teacher, and how I bring that message to the forefront in the narrative is just to highlight, again, we can find other experiences in our lives to mold into our thought leadership and impact and influence others through that.
Yeah. And that really is an example of bringing your whole self to everything you do. And that is something that we see a lot, I think, with brands and with businesses, especially small businesses. People really want to know who's behind it. We don't live in the days anymore when you just put ads in the newspaper, right? Or had ads on TV. People can see into your life in so many ways. And I think it's important to be completely transparent, authentic. And sometimes I know for me, that means I'm oversharing things, but I'm going to reframe that because in the context of your podcast, it wouldn't be oversharing. It would just be sharing. So
Absolutely.
That's really beautiful.
But I think that's also beautiful too, that, I think it is, I don't know if you would say that it's a fear, but I think that that's something that often holds, visionary voices back from sharing their stories. They feel like they're going to be the oversharer, or it's too intimidating to share really from the heart what their experience is like. And at the end of the day, it just really comes down to owning your brilliance and owning who you are and knowing that you're going to attract either people and opportunities that are directly aligned with that energy.
Exactly. Do you have a favorite work example, whether it's somebody you onboarded and you saw them grow, or whether it's a client that you just saw really come into their own, or a story about both?
So many. I am like, again, I'm just such like a connected person that it's like even just getting on connection calls with new potential like referral partners or just community members, because I'm in a number of community groups, is there's always so much alignments that I get from just showing up, having no expectation of what's going to happen on that call and allowing conversation to flow in the way that it's meant to. That alone, I feel probably is the bulk of it, story that I can go on and on and on about. But when it comes to client work, I actually was interviewed on a client podcast. It just published earlier. And I was listening to it, just kind of getting myself in the mindset of like, okay, how can I show up in my brilliance again to share the message that I feel needs to be shared? And just listening to that episode was so profound in a way that I was now on the other end of that relationship. You know, being my client's publicist and representing them in their business through the morals and integrity and how they look to really impact their own leadership. Now being able to see how my client has transformed as now a podcast host through this identity that we've been able to garnish through her thought leadership, being on the receiving end and just really watching the co-creation of that conversation and listening to the impact of her speaking to the transformation that we've been able to do through our partnership together. It was one of the best affirmations that I could have received, just really hearing directly from my client on her own platform, speaking to what we've been able to create together. It's been really special. We can always share that in the show notes if you're interested.
Yes, I would love to do that. And also, of course, we'll share your website where people can also get to your podcast. And I want to know, where do you see your agency, your life, your podcast going next?
The podcast will lead into that, as I feel that, I mean, it can grow in so many phases. I envision that the content and the level of content, especially the frequency of the content, would be a little bit more high level and consistent once I have a little bit more of the time and the support behind it. But right now, I mean, I'm just allowing it to evolve and adapt the way that it needs to. But there are really big visions as far as bringing on sponsorship opportunities, being able to highlight even more guests, maybe doing in-person podcasts as well, and not just being audio, maybe incorporating some video. So there's a lot of plans there. As far as the Conscious Publicist is, again, I'm always evolving and adapting, but I really want the brand to be known for, again, just the space that I create with my clients, to have just not only great success when it comes to their PR, their visibility, authority, and credibility, but just knowing that they really do have a partner that stands behind them in so many more ways than one.
Yeah, fantastic. How do you think the world of AI is affecting the world of publicity? Have you seen it change things in your business or with your clients leaning into it? You know, I feel like I always have to ask an AI question now because I've seen so many changes in education and just tools and resources that people have.
I actually had shared some of my commentary on just my perspective of AI when it comes to PR in a couple articles. I'm going to say it was earlier this year, or it was sometime in 2023, kind of when the AI boom was starting to become present. And I won't knock the AI world, and especially the tools and resources that are always evolving and adapting. They are just that. They're incredible tools. But I wouldn't advocate for somebody who's trying to do a DIY approach to their PR to get too lenient on AI, because it will only get you so far. I believe that there still very much has to be a human element to PR and media relations, because the industry is still built and thrives off of one-on-one human-to-human relationships. AI is just incredible tools to maybe help with messaging or just to give you frameworks to work off of, but there is nothing more impactful than a human connection or another human being able to really understand another human story and how to get that out to the masses.
Yeah, not agree more. It is a tool. It's a suggestion, jumping off point. It is not the be all end all.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to share about yourself, your perspective, the work that you do that we haven't covered?
I think we covered so much. I want to say that your questions are absolutely fantastic.
Oh,
They're
thank you.
lead-ins, and that's the the PR brain coming behind the show. I mean, you do such an incredible job with your platform. I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you so much. It's definitely evolved over time. I think just everything you're saying has resonated with me so deeply because from the time that I started it to the 100th episode to 200 to 300, I realized there was different nuances. And now I don't go off a list of questions. I just want to see where we flow. And I have like my little guiding information, but that's so much more interesting to me. It makes it, I think, a richer, more genuine conversation. And I know that's like a publicist's worst nightmare. How does a client prep to go on an interview, right? But I think it also works better for the audience. And that's where I've been able to see growth happen and people really understand who I am and why I bring on some of the guests that I bring on.
I mean, you can see it, you can feel it, you can hear it. You're doing it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So, Ashley, we want people to go to the Conscious Publicist.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're just, again, open invitation, if you want to connect, theconsciouspublicist.com is where you can learn all about the business. And I'm a big advocate for LinkedIn. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, open invitation, and then just open invitation to explore the podcast as well. And if there's any feedback that anyone has to share about the podcast, I'm always in this state of curiosity and looking to implement things that really resonate with the audience that's tuning in.
Awesome. And I'm sure you have many, but do you have a favorite quote, mantra, family motto, verse, words of wisdom that you live by?
Yes, I do. And it's so interesting that this is the first one that comes to mind. So I was actually reflecting on this earlier, that whatever experience it is that you're going through in your life, personally or professionally, the best way to get on the other side of that experience is through challenges, new opportunities that might bring up a little bit of fear or discomfort because it's not something that you've known. The best way through is really through. It's to feel it, it's to dive in and to really explore, what kind of lesson or experience there is through that. And so that's my little nugget of wisdom today.
I appreciate that. And that is hard to take that first step and you have to be really brave, right? But I couldn't agree more. Well, this has been really an enlightening conversation. I definitely want to stay connected. I have ideas for things, other podcasts I want to see you on. And I just really appreciate you making this connection and making this time for us today.
Again, thank you for holding the space. It's such an honor to be here.
Awesome. Thank you to everybody who's watching or listening to this episode. I know I got a lot out of this conversation and you will too. Please give us a rating, review, follow if you're not doing any of that. And I'll be back again in a few days with another amazing expert to share their journey. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbandamplified.com.